Good evening, and good evening. WeatherBrains episode number 730. This is the pre-show. This is for the 14th of January, 2020. And you know what? I do believe this is actually our 14th anniversary. I need to go back and dig in the archives. We started doing the show in January 2006. And I don't exactly know what date the first show was, but this is 14 years for us. And they said it would never last. What do they know? All right, so let me do a couple of things here real quick. We'll get the guests on, and we will get this thing started. We're doing a Tuesday night special. And that a lot of the football weenies did not want to miss the national championship football game last night, LSU and Clemson. So we moved it from Monday to Tuesday night. So let's see if we can make this happen here. I know that a lot of the weather world is in Boston at the AMS annual meeting, AMS 100. And let's see, we're going to invite everybody. I think that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's okay. Let's hit the send button. And if you're looking for the beginning of the show, it should be about 10 minutes away. So move the slider over about 10 minutes. Yeah, I really wanted to go. Boston is my town. I love it. Go every year. I probably know Fenway Park better than most of the sports venues where I live here. And I'm a Red Sox person, would love to be there, but the weather has been very active and it's very hard to get away this time of the year. And it just didn't happen this year. So maybe I had to sneeze. Bill, sorry.
Bless you, James.
Maybe Nate will join us from Boston. No, Nate's up there.
He said that dinner was running late.
Yeah, I saw a little email.
Progress. You look awfully dressed up tonight. Where's your hoodie?
You know, I've had stuff to do in here. From the minute I got off TV at 6:30, I've had stuff to do. So I've been doing stuff. I have not had time to downgrade my typical attire to the WeatherBrains look.
To the Waffle House.
Yeah, Waffle House.
9 a.m. look.
So I think, I know Kim's in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I say I know she's there. I saw her name mentioned as though she was on a panel there, so I would assume that she's there.
Oh, I would bet.
We've got Kim and Nate. And that's probably it, unless Troy went up there. And I absolutely hated that I could not go. But
me too.
Man, it is so hard. The weather is so challenging this time of the year. It's either ice, snow, flooding, or tornadoes. And when the NWA meeting rolls around, it's typically quiet. The only issue there is with the hurricane. And, that's in August and September. So I don't know. It's tough. The last AMS meeting I attended, I want to say, was actually in Austin, down in Troy's territory. I went to one in New Orleans. I kind of lose track of the years.
Was that the one with the ice storm or winter storm or whatever? That Austin one?
No, this was another one. It's been a while. I really need to get back. I feel bad.
I think the last one I went to was Phoenix.
Yeah, by the time I get to Phoenix,
we love those Glenn Campbell songs, don't we?
We really do.
Did you watch any of the Ken Burns country music series?
No.
I'm not a fan of country music, but I couldn't stop watching it. It was so spectacularly done. And it, spent a lot of time talking about Glenn Campbell because he was part of that California country music.
Yeah. I remember watching the Glenn Campbell show with my mama.
Oh yeah.
My mama thought he was a good looking man. She liked to watch Glenn Cowboy. I called him Glenn Cowbell.
Well, that lineman for the county is one of my favorite songs of all time, and I never was a country music fan.
No, he had that CBS show that came, weekly variety show. And
Well, you know who had a show that was really ahead of his time was Johnny Cash.
I don't even remember that one.
He had on edgy people. He had Dylan and people like that. He and Bob Dylan were really good friends, which you wouldn't think.
Wow. That's interesting.
Roseanne Carter Cash, or what, I guess. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how you say her name, but she said, she was the coolest kid in school because Dad had Bob Dylan on his show.
Bob Dylan.
They didn't care about Johnny Cash, but they loved Bob Dylan in the early 70s, I guess.
Hey, I saw our buddy, our WeatherBrains pal Brett, the punter for the Titans, on TV the other day.
Oh man,
they are
Oh, is he still playing? He's still playing.
One game away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
how about that?
So who do they play this week?
I don't know. I've been so stinking busy.
Chiefs play 49ers. Is that no? Chiefs would play FC. So that would be Titans. Chiefs and Titans, I guess. I'm showing my ignorance of the NFL. 49ers.
Yeah, it's Tennessee at Kansas City Sunday at 2:05 on CBS.
And then who's the NFC Championship? 49ers and
I think Green Bay.
Yeah, where's Dr. John? Come on. Now, where's my guest? We just had a test 10 minutes ago.
This is the easiest platform. We'll make it happen. We'll get
him on. He looked great, sounded great. We just got to get him on here.
No, but I thought about Brett when I saw the Titans play. I thought, wait a minute, that's our WeatherBrains buddy, that Weather Weenie.
He needs to come back and see us.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
After they win the Super Bowl, I guess.
Yeah, all the other NFL guys are back in town now. I saw Mario Addison over here at the gym yesterday. Mario plays for the Panthers. And I would imagine I'll see Joe Webb the next time. Joe plays for the Texans. But now that they're all falling off out of the playoffs, they all come home.
Yeah. Now that you got all this cheating in baseball.
Yeah, the Red Sox parted ways with Alex Cora today, the manager, because he was, in Houston during the sign stealing scandal.
That's terrible.
So he's gone.
Wayne, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, you sounding good. All right, excellent.
Loud and clear.
Have I told you how much I love this platform, James?
I'm telling you. Wayne, it used to take us like 25, 30 minutes to get everybody on here because nobody could figure it out with Google Hangouts. So
yeah,
this platform is so much easier. In fact, I actually used this last night for a conference call.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
And it worked great. So
the great Kevin Selly is joining us.
Got a Tuesday night special.
Do your best Wolfman Jack there, James.
I got nothing. I'm just hoping.
Do you remember that show? Was it Saturday Night Special? Was that what predated Saturday Night Live?
I think so.
Special.
Yeah,
Midnight Special.
Midnight Special.
This is
yeah. Maybe one of the AMS guys will come on here with us. Break out of their
I think
mixers.
Yeah,
they're big parties.
I see a lot of parties going on there on the Twitter.
On the what?
The Twitter.
I didn't think you looked at that.
What? What?
I am a recognized leader in the social media space. I know what y'all talking about.
Yeah.
Well, you are that.
At least I make a mark. How about that?
It's your fault.
I got to find Let's Get Social.
Oh boy.
That was a meme here for a while. I played that for them one night, and it lingered for a year after I played it for them.
It's an earworm for the world.
Yeah, you know, I had to replace this computer back in, I don't know, November, December, and I decided to just do a clean install, which I have not done in years and years and years. So I had to bring everything over kind of manually, and I don't see.
You lost it?
One thing I don't see is Let's Get Social. I've got it. I mean, I've got backups to the backup to the backup to the backup.
Did you get the touch bar? Didn't you hate the touch bar, Bill? Or was that somebody else?
I tolerate it. The bad part about it is I need to go in and rearrange it because I have the one that shuts the window down. It's too close to my finger, so accidentally it'll shut the screen down from time to time.
But I love the touch bar. I use it for audio editing, and it's very helpful for that.
Who are you? Who ever heard of a band named Who?
Oh man, golly! Some of this stuff is just so good.
I almost did an social media audio bit, but I didn't have time after last week's debacle with Aubrey.
Yeah, we need a new one. Your boy's all grown up.
What was the debacle?
I know. Shit. Well, she's been teasing me because I have become a little bit more active on Twitter, and then somehow I don't remember how we got it. She read my pick of the week in the email segment, and that caused, didn't know it, and that caused some trouble. But she likes to needle me because like you know what, I followed her on Twitter, which I hadn't before, because as I explained, the damn thing kept recommending Aubrey. It was like every time I opened it, it was Aubrey Abandowitz. It's like, give me another freaking recommendation, please.
Wonder why it zeroed in on Aubrey, Kevin.
I don't know, but I mean, I'm not lying. It wasn't every time, but it came up a lot. Who knows? You know, they're the surveillance capitalism is in full steam.
Yep. So when's Kara Swisher's coming on, Kevin?
Did y'all? I know. Wouldn't that be nice? I used as my pick of the week? Did anybody listen to Your Undivided Attention, Rock the Voter?
Not yet.
Crickets.
You need to listen to that. It's chilling. I actually started it again this week. I started to listen to it again this week. It's really chilling.
It really is. We're in big trouble.
Yes.
I'm serious.
I am too. In case you hadn't figured that out, I am serious on this. It's getting deeper and deeper and worse. And there's no bridling them. That's the scarier part. There's no bridling because Congress won't do it. They won't do it themselves. And because, you know, look, I admit I lost, right? Everybody's there, but the other half of the argument, I still believe it's a bad way to distribute weather information, but the other half of the argument is at what point do you say, I can't support this anymore? Right? I can't encourage people to go and use this thing that is doing damage. There's another podcast. This guy had the greatest, I wish I could remember where it was now. I'll figure it out. He had the greatest analogy. What was I listening to this week? I don't know. They were talking technology, but he said, he had this line. He said, they were talking about regulation, right? Because tech section 230 lets them get away with anything they want. They're not accountable for anything on the platform, and they hold that as a shield in front of them. And so there's no regulation on tech. But in every other industry, there's regulation. I'm sure there's hotel regulations, right?
Oh, tell me about it. That's why Airbnb is such a problem.
This is okay. So these are certain things that keep you guys in check. Right or wrong, whatever, there are processes, right? But there isn't anything on tech. And this guy had the greatest analogy. He said, if Ford built a car that as it drove around the country, destroying democracy, somebody would step in. That car
Wow.
would not be allowed to be made. And it's exactly right. It's exactly right. I have to go find that now and find out what I was listening to.
Hey, let's get this thing started here. We're late.
Let's do.
So let's hit the record buttons here. There's one record button. There's two record buttons. And here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh, great. The volume's down.
This is you botched the beginning last week too. This is not a good start for.
Well, I got this new soundboard program.
Yeah. Excuses.
Yeah. We're in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, this is WeatherBrains episode number 730. This is the weekly show that's all about weather. This is for the 14th of January, 2019. It's a Tuesday night special. We're one day late this week because some people wanted to watch the national championship football game. Bill,
It's the official day of mourning. It's the end of college football.
Is that why we just changed days?
We don't tell Kevin because he'll never let us live it down.
Oh my God.
what do you mean us? I was ready to go Monday, but Bill said, "Hey, let's do it Tuesday." And,
Yeah.
I
We didn't have
it's-
anybody else. I mean, Kevin, you may have been on the show, but I thought tonight we'd have a couple more people, but no,
Oh, because of AMS.
just us.
we are.
I got to do the
hoping-
Fox show, so I won't be around as much.
Well,
AMS, the AMS annual meeting is going on as we're doing this show, and we are hoping that maybe some of our folks will join us from Boston. We know that Nate Johnson is there. I have reason to believe that Dr. Cloco McLean is there. Troy might be there. So we'll see if anybody joins us.
You have reason to believe? It sounds like you're
Well,
accusing her of some crime.
No. You know, I'm trying to follow the hashtag on Twitter, AMS 2020 or AMS 100, whatever it is. And I see her on some panels and forums, but I've not seen actual photographs of her there. But I have reason to believe that she is there.
they're just
It would
cut
make
out.
sense for her to be there. But Bill, I hate to interrupt your dinner, but I'm going to ask you to bring in our guest here because
Well, what are those things JB used to eat? What were they called?
flat dinners is what he called
Yeah,
them.
he called them flat dinners. This is a bowl of ice cream that they'll brought me, so this is better.
Wow.
But anyway, tonight, James, I'm really excited because we've got Wayne Neely. He's a forecaster at the Department of Meteorology, Nassau in the Bahamas. He's been in our field for 29 years. He majored in meteorology at the Caribbean Meteorological Institute in Bridgetown, Barbados. He's written 14 books on hurricanes, and that is impressive. But he's got a new one out right now that we want to talk about tonight. And of course, we talked a little about Dorian right after the hurricane happened. But of course, it is, if not the most, certainly one of the most devastating hurricanes to hit the Bahamas. Wayne, welcome to the show.
It's good to be back. And
It is good to have you here. James, he was on episode 517. Guess the year, James. If you could say month and year, you get a cookie.
It's 204 years, 2015,
February 6, 2017. That's pretty close.
2017,
close. That's close.
What episode are we on now, James?
This would
730.
be 730. And by the way, let me just say, we did our first show in January of 06, which means we are at our 14th anniversary. So
Wow.
Get our driver's license soon.
happy anniversary to this show.
Wow.
They said it wouldn't last.
16 years, you said?
What do they know? Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I remember I was driving around in a car in Glen Burnie, Maryland when we were discussing doing it.
Wow.
That's my only recollection of all that.
And again,
We-
the original host was not James Spann. It was David Black.
That's right.
And there were no other hosts
And-
in between. So we've only ever had two hosts, I guess.
We must not be very good because someone clearly would have noticed and shut us down by now.
Talk about regulation. Where's the podcast regulation?
Right.
The best I can tell, it looks like it was recorded on the 25th of January.
On
so
my
we're not
birthday.
Quite
Wow.
there.
Now, I missed the first. Yeah, I wasn't. I didn't come in for a while either. So, anyway, we're ignoring our guest. But yeah,
No,
I know you have
yes,
questions. But
yes.
since you've introduced him now, the number of books. Can you give us briefly, Wayne? The I don't want you to tell us, a synopsis of each one, but that 14 books. I mean, there's like one of them. Run them down.
Okay, the first book was called The Great Bahamas Hurricane of 1929.
Mhm.
It occurred during the era when they didn't name hurricanes. They never started naming until 1950, and that was it was called, officially it's called the Great Andros Island Hurricane of 1929, and decimated the capital Nassau and Andros. And it was one storms. It was just like Dorian. It lasted for 3 consecutive days, and most persons, the older persons I interviewed probably about 500 persons that experienced that storm on both islands, and it's the deadliest, probably one of the deadliest and the greatest storm that ever impacted the Bahamas.
Huh.
Second,
How would it
these are-
compare? How would it compare to Dorian in terms of intensity and?
intense. It
Yes,
was
so-
category 4. It's not as good. It's not as intense as Dorian. It was category 4.
Huh.
And it had winds of 140 miles per hour. But back then, they didn't have building codes, so the devastation was even greater from those earlier storms than ones like Dorian.
Hmm.
Because we now have a rigid, strong building code here in the Bahamas.
And I didn't mean to make you run down each one. Are these mostly historical accounts? I get kind of the tone of each one.
Historical and meteorological as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and at the back of each book, I give recollections of persons who experienced them in a significant way. So,
Oh, wow.
So how did you go about researching all of them? Because they're extremely well documented and
yeah,
academically look beautiful.
yeah. Well, what in the Bahamas we still do it today, but it's not. The documentation back then was pretty. It was excellent, and it's not like the storms of now. Back then, we have each island has what we call a family island commissioner, and his job was, after the hurricane, he had to go about in the community, the different settlements, and document what was destroyed and report back to the governor at the time. And the governor had to report it back to the King of England, because we were a colony of Great Britain at the time. So those documentation, those are in the archives at the Bahamas National Archives here in the Bahamas. So, and each one of those have commissioners, we call commissioners report. They normally call them CO23s, and that's where you document all the major islands, the devastation caused on each respective island from each commissioner.
What sent you down this? I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Kim.
What sent you down this path to do these 14 of them? And you're obviously interested in the research, but what started you?
Well, the first one I grew up on Andros. It's the largest island in Bahamas, and I grew up with my parents and my grandparents and persons in the community talking about this hurricane in 1921. If you live in the Bahamas, you would automatically hear about the 1929 hurricane, because the older persons always talked about that storm. And the more I researched it, I remember when I went to interview people, several of them cried as they related the story. So I said it must have been really impactful. So as I started to research it more and more, it became more compelling to me, and I realized that it should be documented for history, not only for history, but for us as Bahamians to know about why these storms were regarded as so great in the annals of Bahamian history. So, and I document that one, and as I document that one, others told me to document other storms, and that's where it started. And my third book was the major hurricanes that affect the Bahamas, and after that I started doing the individual storms. The 1932 Abaco hurricane, which was the first category 5 hurricane to strike the Bahamas. We've only had 4 of them so far. We've had the Great Abaco hurricane of 1932, the Cuba Bronxial hurricane of 1933, Hurricane Andrew of 92, and Dorian of 2019. And the one in 1932 had a similar track as Dorian. It's called the Great Abaco hurricane. It had the similar track and similar intensity. It was 160, some say it was 165 mile per hour winds. And so that's just below 185 of Dorian. But the devastation was significantly greater because all the homes on those islands were destroyed.
And so you said 1933 and 32. So those came in sort of a dipole there.
Yeah.
Right? And also 1928 and 1929, right? You had devastating hurricanes.
There was 3 in 1926. There was one in 1928 called the Great Okeechobee Hurricane. One was in 1929. One was in 1932, and we had 4 hurricanes in 1933, and one was category 5, and the others were category 4 and category 4s and category 1.
Well, take us back to Dorian for a second, because you were there. You were.
Yeah, Dorian is the one storm that really amazed me, and it was a storm that I call it the little storm that could. I didn't expect nothing to come out of Dorian. I thought that the mountains of Hispaniola or Puerto Rico would tear it apart, but Dorian moved further east, and as it left the Puerto Rico, I then realized that there's a possibility of Dorian strengthening significantly more, and it devastated Abaco and Grand Bahama, 2 islands. I traveled to both islands several times because I'm writing an entire book on Hurricane Dorian that's supposed to be released in April. But it's one that we still feel the effects of Dorian to this day, and most of the island is basically, it's like a no man's zone. It's especially Abaco. The devastation is so great that many persons moved off the island. About 70% of the persons moved off Abaco to go to either to the United States or to Nassau in the capital. And because there was no place to live, most of the homes were destroyed.
But the entire country obviously was not impacted because there were large parts of the Bahamas that were not touched at all, and that was an important message, I would imagine.
Yeah, the Ministry of Tourism did an excellent job of advertising to the world that Dorian only impacted 2 islands, which was Grand Bahama and Abaco, and the other islands were pretty well untouched.
Talk about the impact meteorologically of what was going on. Take us back to that that fateful weekend, because it was just horrifying to all of us watching from afar.
Yeah, from afar, I was watching in the meeting, and I knew that when I saw how intense, especially the structure of the structure of the storm itself, that was very scary. And I knew that for the first time, because prior to that, I had written 13 books on hurricanes. And what Dorian did for me was Dorian did something that my books couldn't accomplish. It showed the Bahamas what the potential of a major catastrophic hurricane can do in terms of devastation. And when I forecast, I looked at it, I said, I know this is going to be compelling. And it was even more surprising because as I looked at Dorian, I knew that this would be a major storm that will impact us for years to come because of the intensity of it all.
Now, you've seen a lot of hurricanes and been up close and personal with them, but some of the video shot during the height of the storm was terrifying and
yes,
extremely shocking. Did the intensity and the impact shock you as a meteorologist, Wayne?
It did. Yes, it did. And actually, you don't realize the impact of Dorian because it was not just a storm for the Bahamas, but it was a storm for the entire North Atlantic because it was one of the most intense hurricanes that ever struck the North Atlantic, other than the Great Liberty Hurricane of 1935. And so most persons got to see what a strong Category 5 hurricane can do, especially to the Bahamas, to a low-lying country like the Bahamas. Highest point was about 250 feet. And so it had significant flooding, not only in Abaco and Grand Bahama, but on other islands as well. We had flooding and we had strong winds, but it was a very deadly storm. And prior to the deadly storm we had on record prior to Dorian was Andrew, and there was 3 persons. Wilma, there was 1 person who died, and most cases there was only 1 or 2. And last time more than 10 persons died was in 1942. And what happened is in the 1930s they established a radio station because the number 1 industry in the Bahamas was sponging in the 1920s and 30s. So most able-bodied men would go out at sea, collect the sponges, but during the storm they had no indication that a storm was coming. Most of them. So many of those storms, one of the persons were caught in the storms, those major hurricanes back then, and many of them died in those storms. But they created a radio station that reached from Grand Bahama in the north to Inagua in the south. and that kind of lessened the damage from the storms. And so that reduced the fatality total in a significant way. So most persons never experienced a deadly hurricane like Dorian in modern times. So that was an eye-opening experience for most Bahamians. And to this day, they have the official death toll is 70, and the official missing is 285 persons are still declared missing and presumed dead. So and prior to that, the only major storm prior to that impacted the Bahamas was in 1929, which saw 142 persons dying in that storm. And most of you guys know that's the Great Okeechobee Hurricane of 1928. 1,400 of those persons in Florida were Bahamian migrant workers. So prior to the Okeechobee Hurricane, Dorian is the greatest fatality loss from hurricanes other than the 1800s.
Well, that's a shocking death toll, but I feared after that weekend that it was going to be even worse than that.
And what happened? It was a case of, I think some of the deaths were preventable, but Hurricane Dorian struck Abaco in the areas called the Mud and Pigeon Pea. Those are migrant population live in those areas. They live in substandard homes. The houses are shanty towns, so there's no mattress. And many of those persons stayed in those homes, even though the government made it a point to go to them and want them to evacuate to evacuation shelters. Many stayed. Some of them stayed because they felt some of them were illegal migrants. So they felt that maybe the government has some ulterior motives to either get them back to Haiti or wherever, but a lot of them stayed in those homes, and most of the fatalities occurred in those two shantytown settlements of the Mud and Pigeon Pea.
So how will the rebuilding process go?
Well, they've since banned redevelopment of those two areas. The government has banned to make sure that no more shantytown goes to those two different places, and they're going to make those monument, make them a memorial to the Hurricane Dorian. But that's official. That's what the official word is. What they're going to do with those two areas, because most of the persons who died died in those same areas.
Well, you mentioned that the building codes are pretty strict. Are they strong enough to prepare for these type of hurricanes in the future?
Yes, they do. Our building codes can withstand Category 5 up to Category 5 intensity. We've had one of the strongest building codes in the region. We have one of the strongest building codes, and the Bahamas is the first country to have a building code. The first building codes were actually drawn up by Herbert Saffer, the co-inventor of the Saffer-Simpson scale. He was a civil engineer. He took the idea of building codes to the United States. The United States turned him down, and he came to the Bahamas, and the government back then was a little more receptive, and they developed building codes. And when Andrew destroyed South Florida, your government came back to the Bahamas and looked at our building codes as a template to strengthen your building codes as well. So we have one of the strongest in the region in terms of building codes. But the problem is we have a Category 5. There's only so much you can do to prevent devastation from a Category 5 hurricane. You're gonna get homes are gonna be destroyed no matter what, how well the building codes are. But with winds in excess of 157 miles per hour, it's not much you can do to prevent that from being devastating.
Now you mentioned an active evacuation process in advance of the hurricane. How would you say the emergency management process in the Bahamas compares to coastal areas of the United States?
Well, I think we do a pretty good. I think personally, I think the United States have a better emergency management process, but we have once there's a hurricane alert, which is 60 hours away, the government through National Emergency Management Agency, which is similar to your FEMA, they take over and they start the evacuation process, and they start alerting the residents in the potential impacted areas to evacuate to hurricane shelters or bunker down. And it's pretty thorough. They have everything systematic. What would happen if a Category 5 hurricane hit, and the category 4, category 3, another. So NEMA does a pretty good job of explaining. And before the hurricane season, they go on an educational course of informing Bahamians of what to do in the event of a storm and how they should prepare for a storm. And one thing that NEMA does stress is that you shouldn't wait until the storm is upon you to start preparing. Preparing starts from before June the 1st for the hurricane season.
And really, you have a long hurricane season there. I mean, because
Yes.
it really lasts from June to November.
Yes. The last we had one in Hurricane Michelle of 2001 was in November of 2001. So we've had storms in November as well.
You know, the storm that always sticks out in my mind, James, I doubt you, I don't really remember it. I read about it after the fact, but 1965's Hurricane Betsy
Yes.
was a hurricane that confounded and flummoxed forecasters
Yes.
For days over the Labor Day weekend. And I learned a lot of those names of the islands reading those advisories from Hurricane Betsy.
I remember Betsy, I interviewed a lot of persons in Betsy. What happened is that Hurricane Betsy passed the Bahamas, and it made its loop. It's one of the most notable hurricanes that performed a loop. And at the time when Betsy passed, most of the Bahamian residents took their shutters down and went about their normal duty and assumed that Betsy was gone. And it came back, made a loop and hit us again. Many of those persons were caught off guard because Betsy occurred in the middle of the night. Some of them said they woke up 3-4 in the morning to hear the news, people going around letting everybody know that Hurricane Betsy is turning around and you must prepare, you must put your shutters back up. So many of those persons had to put their shutters back up in quick pace for Betsy.
Talk about your relationship with the National Hurricane Center at your governmental agency, how much you rely on them and how much communication flows back and forth between the two organizations, how important that is.
Yeah, that's important because that what happened with every storm that's impacting the region, impacting the Bahamas, the director has a direct link with the National Hurricane Center, and they for example, they coordinate with each other, determine, let's say, for example, whether they should when they should issue a hurricane warning or hurricane watch, or when they should drop the warnings. And sometimes it's an interesting thing because some of them they go back and forth. Some would say, okay, I think we could, and like for example, when I worked with one of the storms with former director Arthur Roll, they wanted to drop the warnings with Sandy. So he told them to wait for another 6 to 12 hours because part of the rain band was still over Grand Bahama and Abaco, but the Hurricane Center wanted to drop the warnings for the Bahamas, but they listened to him, and he's the director, and so they continued for another 12 hours, and it's a good combination because they help us a lot, and we in turn we also provide data to them as well. We have upper air stations and local stations throughout the Bahamas. We now have a series of automatic weather stations throughout the Bahamas. Prior to 20 years ago, that didn't exist. So we more prone to potential even getting information from those weather systems to help with the forecasting of hurricanes and impacting us or the United States.
Kevin has to go do the Fox show where he is, but he wants us to ask you, Wayne, what is the television landscape like during a landfalling tropical cyclone in the Bahamas? What is it like here where it's a media frenzy?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's sometimes I think it's even worse. What happens is that during a hurricane, whenever alert is issued, the basic administration of the Department of Meteorology shuts down. The director, he goes to the Prime Minister's office, and the Prime Minister calls sometimes 6 to 12 hour news conference, every 6 to 12 hours news conference on the storm, basically advising them to be prepared for the impending storm. The senior deputy director comes to the to the Department of Meteorology Forecast Office section, which is where all the warnings and alerts are issued from. And the next deputy director, he goes to the national radio station, which is ZNS, and it's a coordination between the three of them, and along with the local forecasters like me and others. So they coordinate with each other, and the idea is to get all the information that we have out to the public, because those warnings saves lives, and and to let people be prepared for a storm, know what to expect in the event of storm striking their part of the Bahamas.
A big part of our issue is apathy and inconsistent messaging and things that the public, uses as an excuse not to take action. Do your citizens take things more seriously? And
no,
it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. They wait until the last minute, and they run to the food stores. Probably they wait until they for sure that they said that storm is coming, and they wait until the last minute, and then they go and prepare. Once they know that the storm is coming, and they wait until they flog the stores, and they go crazy in the food stores. Things like, I remember seeing people buying caviar and the can, things that they don't need. They just went crazy. They just buy everything in the store. A good friend of mine, Mr. Rupert Roberts, who owns the chain of food stores, grocery stores over here. He does well because they run to his store, flock to his stores, and buy as much as they can to prepare for the storm at the last minute. And most cases they wait, and sometimes they run to the hardware stores to get plywood and building supplies as well.
So is it like here in the United States where James Spann has stock in all the grocery stores, and he makes sure that he gets those first hints of those snowflakes out early, so they'll come and buy the milk and bread?
Yeah, they do it. Yeah, the milk and bread are the first thing to go. The milk, bread, and the flashlights, they're the first thing to go. And they normally go, and then after that is everything else. The biscuits, the whatever, the cream, whatever you have, they go very fast.
The milk sandwiches fly off the shelves here, that's for sure. Well, as you heard at the beginning, Kevin is our social media officer, and he is a huge fan of that. And he wanted to know how does social media play into it in the communications process during a hurricane there?
It has a significant role, and every year it gets even more significant because we have at the Department of Meteorology, we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account, another page, and we also have other accounts as well on social media. And once the warnings are issued, prior to social media becoming a mainstay, most every person would call the meteorological office. But now once we upload it to Facebook and we upload it to all the media sites, Twitter and everything else, we get less of the calls now, and we get more people becoming knowledgeable of storms. And the good thing is with modern technology now, the public is becoming more educated. They become more educated about storms and the impact of hurricanes. Even though they still don't take them seriously until the last minute, but they are educated and knowledgeable about that. But hurricanes. So
do you have the problem of social meteorologists like we have here, where they take to their favorite platform and load bogus model information and all sorts of stuff?
We have our share of that too, and we have our share of persons, the armchair, we call them armchair meteorologists.
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, wow.
So we have them here in the winter. You have them in the summer for hurricanes. We have them now.
Really?
Anytime it turns cold, what they do, they'll come in and forecast a snowstorm, 2 weeks in advance. Crippling snowstorm for the southern United States. Stay tuned, like, click, and share here to get more information. So, they figured out this is how they're going to get all the likes and all the shares. And typically it's a 15-year-old kid sitting in his mom's basement, and he's figured out how to game the system. And some of these posts, as outrageous as they are, will attract 250,000 views. It's
Yeah.
shared and people have no regard for the truth. It doesn't matter. It's just something that's sexy. Man, a snowstorm is coming.
Yeah.
And I've seen it in the summer when it comes to tropical systems. These boneheads will sit down and throw out, and they don't even know what they're looking at.
Yeah.
They know where these maps are. They'll go find these maps. They have no idea of the physics, the biases, the limitations. They don't know how it works, but they find a major hurricane. It shows up at 384 hours, and they're going to post it.
Well, I don't know, but those ones in the Bahamas, they're crazy here. They would actually, what they would do, they would listen to the American media station. They would listen to every media station.
That's a mistake.
And they would listen to us, and then they would compare both reports. James Bond said, yeah, he said it's coming in 13 hours, and you said 12 hours. So what are we to believe? So then we have to say, look, James Bond is giving it for America, be giving it for the Bahamas. So they would say, and Wayne said, and sometimes they would go and they would turn us against one another. They said, Basil Dane said it's going to be this and it's going to be that. And so what I do, I have a personal Facebook page that to try and get rid of all, because we had a whole lot of them. And so a lot of people now turn, because you get it from a meteorologist now, but they have a lot of those persons, they don't know anything about meteorology. And they argue with you because you're the one who did the math, the sciences, the theory and everything else. But they don't understand. They see a map, they just put it there and say, oh, that's the storm is going to come this time. They don't know where the storm is going to slow down, where it's going to pick up speed, what the high pressure will do, what the low pressure will do. They don't know, but they just saw it there. There's a map, and they paste it on their Facebook page, and that's it. So, but we always have our problem with armchair meteorologists. And they called channel 7 in Florida said the storm is going to come. and they want you to either agree to disagree, and if you disagree with them, they'll say, see, Wayne doesn't know what he's talking about.
Never heard that before, have you, James?
That's our world. Wow.
So you can pick up all the stations out of Miami and West Palm and all those places?
All of it, ABC, NBC, and CBS. We have all the local stations in the Bahamas.
I noticed you had one of our favorite Hurricane Center directors, Bill Reed, do one of your forwards.
Bill Reed has done the forward for this book, yeah. Last one was the greatest hurricanes of the North Atlantic. That one was done by Michael Davison, good friend of mine in Washington at the HBC at NCEP. He wrote the forward for the major hurricanes to affect the North Atlantic. And I've had Brian Norcross. I've also had Professor William Gray, Herbert Saffer, before he passed on. I've had Phil Klossbach. And it's basically, what I try to do is I try and get people who made a difference in meteorology in a significant way and document. And I basically give a brief bio of them. And just because those people made it possible for person to forecast hurricanes, made it easier for me. And I'm sure, with the knowledge, let's say Professor William Gray, Chris Lancey from the National Hurricane Center, all these people have made it really paved the way for a person like me to research hurricanes.
Yeah, I think almost every one of those people have been a WeatherBrains guest WeatherBrain at some point or another, James. That's that's a Hall of Fame list of hurricane folks right there.
Yeah.
So
hey Wayne, if you could go back and do something different when it comes to the warning process over Dorian, what would you do differently? Well,
I think I would, but for Dorian, that I would go into the Haitian communities. They went there, but I don't think it's distress. Because no one prior to Dorian, no one experienced a Category 5 other than a small settlement in North Eleuthera and Kiatki, which were impacted by Hurricane Andrew of 1992. I would have made sure that those persons know the dangers associated with them staying, and somehow convince those persons to leave and there would be no repercussions from them by going to the shelters. I think many of those persons stayed in their homes because they fear that maybe the immigration might come and round them up and send them back to Haiti. But that's one thing I would do. And I think media information would be, we could have done a better job with that. With media getting the story to the Bahamas.
Yeah, and do you integrate social science into what you do? That's the one thing that we have started doing here, is trying to weave social science into the warning process, because most of us have a background in physical science,
yes,
but we don't understand human behavior, and we're
Yeah.
trying to get people to do something and react, and they've been a great help. And are you using social scientists at all there?
And I think I'm one of the few forecasters who actually use social science, because I've written 14 books on hurricanes, on all the major hurricanes. And I documented those persons who experienced it. And for example, I interviewed the persons who, for example, there's a lady in Grand Bahama who lost her son in Wilma because she refused to leave when she was ought to evacuate from the coastal area. They felt safe. Most people feel safe in their homes. The trick is to try and convince them that it'd be detrimental to them if they stay in their homes. A lot of people, they're gonna stay in there. Some people have the hurricane party or whatever. They got this excitement rather than they should fear hurricanes. And I did my communication with the public, I mentioned those names. I'd mention those names impacted by those storms and tell them and give the reason how they died. For example, one person was going to work in the middle of the storm and flood waters washed them away. And for the last 20, 30 years, all of those deaths were preventable. Every single one of them were preventable if they followed simple hurricane advice: evacuate and because the people want them, but people want them to, the media want them to move out of their homes, because in one case, it was near the water, and persons don't realize the storm surge, don't realize the importance of storm surge. They feel that water will come in with probably just 6 inches in their yard, in their homes. But for Dorian, there was 15 feet of water in one of our minister's house, and he didn't expect it. No one did. No one expected, especially in Grand Bahama, no one expected the flood waters to come that far inland. They also didn't expect it to come that high. So there were many persons who drowned in those flood waters in Grand Bahama from Dorian. So knowledge about hurricanes is important to pass on.
Here with NHC, we have storm surge warnings now and these slosh models. Is there any specific products that you have to warn of storm surge and what areas will be inundated?
Yeah, we have, my former director, Arthur Roll, he did a storm surge atlas on what would happen with, and he did it for the entire Bahamas, and he documented what would happen if a Category 1 storm, it showed the different islands, how far the water would come inland with a Category 1 to a Category 5, and the potential and what the direction would come from. And he did all of that in a storm surge act. I don't think we've made much use. We didn't make as much use as possible of that atlas, but that's one of the things that National Hurricane Center for storm surge feet level, the level storm surge and the impact that it will have on respective islands.
So what happens now in the future? Let's say have a tropical storm, a Category 1 hurricane approaching this hurricane season. People, what do you think they will say? Well, this is not as bad as Dorian. I don't need to do anything.
No, I think it's going to be the opposite. I think because what happened, you had, after Hurricane Dorian struck, every phone was working. So all those pictures that you saw in the media, and they're countless, there's thousands more that you guys didn't see. Every phone, they would send them around on social media and on their local phones and circulating them. So they now see what a potential storm can do. They now see what a potential storm, a strong storm like Dorian can do. So they're gonna prepare. Next time you talk about hurricanes and preparing, they're gonna remember Dorian. They're gonna remember those persons who stayed in the mud and pigeon peak. They realized that the waters, and they're gonna remember the image of the former minister, present minister of agriculture, in his house, and he's on the second floor, and the water's on the second floor of his house. So they're gonna remember those, and they're gonna take hurricane warnings more seriously than I think. I think one thing that we're lacking is hurricane insurance. Most people, even though we live in Hurricane Alley, Hurricane Belt, most people don't prepare for hurricane. A lot of people don't take out hurricane insurance, and I think that's one way that we're lacking. And I have a good relationship with the local insurance companies here in the Bahamas, and as I try and want them to at least insure your home for potential, because right now, they said about 70 to 90% of the homes were not insured. So many of those persons have to build those homes back from their own pockets. And that's one way we're lacking, to inform, to educate people about the importance of hurricane insurance, the importance of hurricane preparations, and what to do in the event a major hurricane should strike in any part of the Bahamas.
So Kevin, I just wanted to point out that Wayne has just told us that social media actually has a benefit in the Bahamas. So it must be like different there than it is here, because he says they're going to be much better prepared next year when even a Category 1 comes, because they shared so many videos from Hurricane Dorian live and, right after the hurricane.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously I have much comment on that, but we're about to come out of the break, so I can't really say anything.
See, Bill knew that Kevin's in a newscast and he can't talk, so.
Yeah, he's got his hands tied behind his back right now, but there'll always be later, so we'll find out. But that is a good side of it, Wayne, for sure. Keep going, James. You got some good questions there.
Yeah. So how long, Wayne, will this heightened state of awareness last, do you think? Will it last 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? How long?
I think about 5 years, because after a while, Bahamians have a short memory. And if they didn't have a major hurricane within about 5 years, I'd say they would go back to their normal selves. But for the next 5 years, at least, I would say they're gonna be prepared for hurricanes, especially after Dorian. Because every phone has a camera, every phone has what we call WhatsApp, and they circulate those images of devastation on each island, and tons. And one day I probably got like about 4,000 images. And the person,
wow.
I don't know, because I document hurricanes, everyone was sending the images to me. And everyone, so once they see the damage, the devastation that a hurricane can cause, I think they're going to be more prepared for the next hurricane. Now, how long that's going to be, I think about 5 years. If there's no hurricane, they're going to forget about that. But for the next 5 years, I feel fairly confident that they're going to be prepared, because we've had similar incidences with prior hurricanes. With Hurricane Andrew, Andrew occurred in North Lucha. That was an area that's predominantly dominated by fishermen, lobster fishermen. And Andrew struck during the peak of the lobster season in the Bahamas. And when the storm, so most of the fishermen from that settlement, we call Spanish Wells, most of them went out at sea and didn't prepare their homes for in the event of a hurricane should strike. Andrew caught them on the waters. By the time they got home, the storm was just impacting them. So it was too late. But from Andrew, from 1992 to now, whenever those fish, they still go every August for the lobster season. Our lobster season begins on the 1st of August. They still go on the 1st of August, but before they go, they take up their storm shutters and put them up, because the experience they learned. And at the time, they were not insured. Now, about 90 to 95% of the homes in that settlement are covered by insurance. And same thing in Grand Bahama. They've experienced Hurricane Wilma, Hurricane Francis and Jane, 2004, Hurricane Wilma, 2005, and Hurricane Matthew, 2016. So it forced many persons to move from Grand Bahama, but it forced those ones who stayed there to take out hurricane insurance as a means of alleviating the damages caused by these storms.
So let me ask you this. For those of us here in the United States, let's say a hurricane's approaching the Bahamas, What's the best source for us to get data out of the islands and to get information about what's actually going on there? Because during Dorian, the information flow is chaotic. Well, what's the best sources for us originating from the islands?
Well, I have a weather page called NASA Weather Live. I normally document. I keep them updated. I update it during the storm. I update it every 3 to 6 hours, and most cases I provide. We have automatic weather stations as well. You can get that from local Department of Meteorology website. You can get the information from the automatic weather station throughout the family islands. I think we've had up to 26 of those stations around the Bahamas, and the National Hurricane Center has come to rely on them. So they issued those. But the only problem is with the present director, he's not as, I don't think he's prone, because most of the information they basically stipulate that only to be used in-house, which I think shouldn't be the case. It should be, even our Doppler radar system, you can't just go online and pick up the Doppler system. They've made it kind of, it's like, they made it only used by the Department of Meteorology Forecast Office section. I think you should make it a link that's available to the entire world.
You need to put this on your website. See, you figure out a way to get this on your site. We'll all go there.
You can get Wayne put in jail now, James.
Not to my head is bald. I shave it off because of gray hair. I've gotten plenty of gray hair with the leadership in my department. So, so that's why I don't have any hair now. It either it followed or it became gray, and I had to shave it off.
That's what happened to us too, Wayne.
But to say we have the same problem, so we're all in the same boat here. Wow. But I would assume that because I recall watching a feed, if you could recommend a stream from a media entity there, radio or television, what's the best stream to access?
Nassau Guardian. It's a news media, and they update it almost on an hourly basis. The Nassau Guardian website, and they give you the stories behind the hurricanes as well. And there's the Department of Meteorology website, www.bahamasweather.org.bs. That would be the best location to get from the Bahamas Department of Meteorology website.
So other than hurricanes, what's the most exciting weather that you deal with?
Well, we during the summer we have thunderstorms. We have a lot like right now we have normally the swells that come in normally January, February, and March. This is when you get the high seas. Right now, the winds are pretty strong on there, so I think they're advising motorists to remain in the port until the swells have subsided, until the seas have subsided. They have a strong high pressure out there that's keeping the surf conditions very rough. So we're advising swimmers and boaters to remain out of the water until those seas subside. That's during the winter. We get swells and frontal systems during the winter. During the summer, we have the hurricanes we have to deal with.
So do you monitor the seismic activity near Puerto Rico? Right. And that leads to the next question. Have you had quakes near your country? And do you have a plan in place, any preparations for a tsunami if one is ultimately generated one day?
Yeah, we do have preparation. The National Emergency Management has a very detailed plan should a tsunami hit or should a warning is issued. And every year they do tsunami tests. They run drills. And the only problem is I think about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years when they did the first one, they said tsunami warning and everyone went crazy.
Yeah.
Everyone's afraid running to the hills. They don't know what to do. And they just send a warning out, but they didn't put this as a test to let them know it was.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So there was tsunami coming, and it was the Southeast Asia they just saw everything with Southeast Asia, but they did, and so but now they're much more well planned now, and tsunamis. We have earthquake. We've had an earthquake. We had a report of earthquake I think about 2 years ago in Nagua, and we also had a report of tremors in Nagua in the 1890s. and that was the last one, other than 2 years ago. And basically just cracked walls of the houses in Niagara, and they felt some rattling. Because there's a plate between Cuba and Haiti that impacts the Bahamas. It's the Southeast Bahamas. But in terms of the North, we've not had any accounts of any tsunamis or any earthquakes or anything. We're in a stable platform.
You know, our friends down in Puerto Rico, that has just been horrible. I know you guys been keeping up with this. It's just like I watch the feed from USGS, and every time I glance over there, there's a 4.2, 4.5.
It was crazy for a couple of days. And the aftershocks and thing was still going on. I said that's crazy. They had Hurricane Maria, and now they have the earthquakes. I don't know what they're going to be next.
A plague of locusts, maybe, or who knows? I mean,
I know. I went to NCEP to train at the international desk, and that was in 5-6 years ago. And they had Irene, they had a hurricane, they had a heat wave, they had an earthquake. So, and Mike told me don't come back no more because
show title.
Tell me don't come back. He don't want to see me back no more. The weather goes crazy when I come.
Hey, Wayne, this is a dopey question, but there was a story during hurricane season last year about a dog that had been trapped. Do you remember this for like over a week and had been getting water out of a pot? I never heard anything about that. Can you recount that story, and do you know an update?
Yeah. It has been rescued, and it basically survived under the rubble, and they rescued the dog, and he's now found a home for it as well.
In the Bahamas, I thought they brought him or her to Florida at one point.
I don't know. I don't know who, but they just said that they found a home for him.
They found him. Maybe you guys talked about this already, but from your position, and I know you're not a climatologist, but you've written so many books and you're obviously paying attention. Do you have a comment on climate change and hurricanes in the Bahamas?
Well, I'm like every meteorologist. No, I think climate change is occurring now. Where it's going to affect the frequency, I think the jury's still out on that. But in terms of intensity, I'm kind of leaning towards it impacting intensity. But I think more studies are needed to document that. But in terms of climate change, we are current the 14th and 14th and 15th of July of this year. We've had the two warmest years, the warmest temperatures in the Bahamas. I think only one year prior to that was warmer than those 2 days. So we've had warmest, and the last 5 years we've seen several maximum temperature records being broken. So the temperature is really getting much. It appears getting warmer, and the fronts, we normally get cold fronts during the winter, but for the last 5 years they've been much milder than normal. Normally during the Christmas and shortly after, you had cold fronts that you had to wear jackets. Now they're so mild now that nobody really needs to wear a jacket anymore. Jacket or something.
So let me ask you this: when do you consider it cold? Most people that live in the Bahamas, when do you consider it cold?
The problem that I have, that's my problem right now. I operate a weather page called Facebook weather page called NASA Weather Live, and I update whenever there's a cold front coming. I said I would let them know there's a cold front coming, and it's very strong, and you're gonna need blankets and jackets. And most of the tours coming down, they are told to log on to my site rather than the official page of others. And I'd say it's gonna be cold tonight, which for us is like 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And they'd laugh, and you'd have little laughter. You see, like one time someone sent me 100 laughing emoticons.
Yeah.
and they sent me a picture of them in the snow. Say that's cold, this is not cold. So they come, and the average Bahamian wear warm jackets and everything, cap and woolen hat. The tourist comes along and they wearing short pants and a short sleeve shirt. So what we call cold is not the same thing what you call cold.
Well, we have the same problem down here in the southern U.S. I mean, it gets down to 18, 19 degrees. This is bone chilling cold. Our friends up north, man, what do you mean? That's not bad. So, it's all relative based on your latitude, I guess. All right. So Wayne, thank you for your time. So once again, let's plug your book. You got your book coming out in April. What's the name and how can people get it?
The book that's coming on in April is called Hurricane Dorian, The Impact of Hurricane Dorian on the Bahamas. And my new book is out now. I have two published. If you can see it, it's a 681 page book, and it includes all the major hurricanes to affect the Bahamas from 1500. Actually, it's the third documented hurricane in the region. The first hurricane that we had was the Crooked Island hurricane of 1500. And that was where you had Christopher Columbus, the fleet of Christopher Columbus was coming from South America, bringing treasures from South America, taking it back to Spain. And they passed through the Bahamas, and the storm caught them near Crooked Island in the Bahamas. And two boats were lost, the Pinta and another one called the Farilla. And they were lost in the Bahamas. Both ships were found in 1986, I think, around the mid-80s. And they were found in the mid-80s. And that's the first storm I document. And the last one I documented in the book is Hurricane Dorian. But the Dorian, I go basically just give a brief outline of Hurricane Dorian and its impact on the Bahamas. And I also writing a new book on Dorian, so I'll be able to go more in depth into Hurricane Dorian.
And I guess where do you get these on Amazon, or what's the best place to buy your book?
It's on all Amazon, on all Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and all the major online bookstores throughout the region, and they're available in the bookstores as well. And
awesome.
It came out on the 8th of December, and it was the #1 release for weather on Amazon.com. So it's selling pretty well, and it's really getting its traction and in there. So it's a pretty good book.
Fantastic. And again, your website is
Nassau Weather Live.
There you go. Well, Wayne, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for giving us an hour. Fascinating subject, and I hope everybody's recovering from Dorian. And hopefully next time we talk, you won't have a major disaster to talk about.
Yes, hopefully I'll talk about how sunny and hot it is.
I'll make a tourism plug for the Bahamas too, if I can, because years ago, do you remember this, James? Did you get invited to this years and years ago? The Bahamas, Wayne, do you know anything about this? This is, gosh, it must have been, I don't know, in the 2000s somehow. They did a promotion where they went up and down the East Coast, and they invited television weather people from TV stations to come and do the weather from there. Did you get one of these invitations, James?
Yeah, and actually that's how I met Professor William Gray there.
Oh.
I met Brian Norcross, who also did forward for me. I did most of me, and that was good. It was excellent. I think it's the craziest thing that my government did. We had a program, the Ministry of Tourism, what they call it, Ministry of Tourism, weather outlook. It's where they invited all the top meteorologists from the United States and Canada to come for a week in the Bahamas. And the idea was they want to familiarize the meteorologists about Bahamas.
Yep.
Most people think that when you talk about the Bahamas, you only think about one, Nassau, and they try to dispel that rumor, and that's the problem why we have with Hurricane Dorian now, because we have Ministry of Tourism have to go there and say that the Bahamas is not just 2 islands; it's 700 islands and keys.
Yeah,
so they did it, and they did. It was excellent. The person who thought of it was an excellent program. Was an excellent conference, and every meteorologist from all the local weather stations, not only in the United States. So for a whole week, they would show the weather person on short pants and a tank top on the beach, broadcast live from the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And everybody would be jealous. The reporters say, "Oh, we're jealous of you," and everything. And the publicity that we got from that, you couldn't pay for the publicity for that.
Right.
And they just canceled out of clear blue sky. They just canceled it.
Just for the record, I did not wear a tank top during my visit.
No. Did you wear Bermuda shorts and socks?
No one wants to see that. But boy, we had a great time. And we worked like dogs because we went around, but they were so nice, and they flew us around from island to island, and we did a lot of things, and it was really in fact, now that I think about it, it's probably because you could tell me, maybe you can't. I was there before. I think they were just starting to move dirt on the big Atlantis building.
Oh,
okay. Yes. So that was a long time ago.
That's a really.
It seems it seems to me that maybe, hint, clue, you should do that again, Wayne. I'm happy to come. And,
I would do hint, hint. Yes, see my eyes. Look at my eyes.
yeah, okay, I see. Yeah, here, see my eye. Do it again, Wayne. It was fun.
I will try to convince those people, but I don't know. But I don't know why they canceled it. That was excellent.
Well, but I'm really pleased to hear you say that it was successful, because I always wondered that, because I know they put a lot of effort into that. A lot of people came, and we were there for a weekend. But I'm so pleased to hear that it was successful.
Yeah, it was, because the Ministry of Tourism, they spend millions upon millions of dollars to advertise the Bahamas, to promote the Bahamas, and they have to go, and each they have to go to like New York area, they have to advertise New York area, Southeast area. Each place is had, but the problem with that, the good thing about that conference, that showcased the entire United States of America.
Right.
And they showed the person, like, for example, they had showed Professor William Gray and Phil Klossbach talking about climate change and talking about hurricanes, the impact of hurricanes. And they were on the beach and sitting down, nice sunny day, clear blue skies, crystal clear waters, and that was advertisement itself that paid for publicity for many times over.
Well, I'll tell you, I was in Richmond, Virginia at the time, but I'm in Wichita Falls, Texas now. And I will tell you, there are many people in Wichita Falls who want to know more about the Bahamas.
Oh, brother.
It's a big feeder market for the Bahamas.
It's a huge, well, it will be once we do this thing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. The choir, you preaching to the choir. I don't know why, because that and what it did for me as a meteorologist, I was as a forecaster, it benefited me, because what they did, they had persons like Kerry Emanuel with climate change, and they had Professor William Gray on the other side debating, and those two would debate, or they would have different persons with different group opposing views debating the subject in conference and seminars, and it was pretty interesting. It was well educated. It was educational as well as it was.
Right. Yeah. I'm counting on you now that I get to meet you and shake your hand when we do this again.
Yes, no problem. I will definitely I will try my best. Every time I get an opportunity to talk, it's not just you. Every time I get the opportunity to talk, especially locally in the media, I talk about the Ministry of Tourism Weather Conference. So
there you go. Well, Wayne, thanks for being on the show. We appreciate it. Fascinating. Can't wait to get your new book when it comes out, and some of the other ones as well. So thanks a lot. Hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.
It was a pleasure to talk to you guys.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
Wayne. All right. So let me roll this audio. I want to say this is one of the first 3 shows. I was trying to dig through the archives. I have not listened to this, so let's see what this is here.
Oh, yeah.
I personally think we have way too many warnings. Severe thunderstorm warnings are a dime a dozen, and it's getting to be that way with tornado warning.
Welcome to WeatherBrains, the podcast about weather by weather fans. I'm David Black with the Weather Company from Birmingham, Alabama, welcoming you to our first program. With me tonight, James Spann, the chief meteorologist of ABC 3340 Television in Birmingham, Alabama. Hello, James.
Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. And this is
Hey, David, how you doing? I was trying to sound like a radio announcer there.
That was great.
It's like our anniversary segment there. There you go, Jay.
One thing that's glaringly obvious, though, is there was a little pre-production on that. I mean, there's no pre-production here. When David was doing it, he took out clips and he made intros, and there were things, and now it's just show up and.
David was a
preparation at all.
That's right.
No, our show prep, we come in here and just flip the switch and go. So no, but that was show number 1, and that was released on January 31st of 2006. Wow. So we are almost at that 14-year point here at the end of this month. So, but again, we did not go to video until 7 years in, maybe 6 years in. But what happened for those that are new, my boss here wanted this to become a video show so he could run it on, when we got the .2s, the .3s, everybody went digital. And obviously we've got a dedicated weather channel, and he wanted this to be on the weather channel. But anyway, it's been a fun ride, and we're just getting started, man. I mean, come on. I mean, the best is yet to come. We got to take a break, so we're going to come back and we're going to do obviously no email with Aubrey out, and I'm very sad we don't have our correspondents from Boston. I think it must be 50-cent beer night at Hooters up there. they have all gone down to the Hooters. So let's do the Tony Rice Astronomy Report. We're going to come back with the Weather Roundup, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
Neil Peart, drummer and lyricist for the Canadian progressive rock trio Rush, died last week after a quiet battle with brain cancer. I'm confident his passing has been the subject of water cooler talk this week on college campuses, coffee breaks at the AMS conference, as well as the halls of NASA. You see, we nerds were drawn to Rush, and it crossed generations. I return each year to Virginia Tech, my alma mater, to speak at the AMS and NWA chapters there. I still hear Rush coming from the dorm room windows and cars as they circle the drill field looking for that elusive parking spot. Perhaps it's the technical precision. Maybe it's the unusual and frequently shifting time signatures, also known as math rock. But it's probably Peart's lyrics. You see, Peart was a voracious reader all of his life, and he loved to travel, especially solo. This is reflected in the lyrics, rich with sci-fi and other literary references. But he was also a lifelong student of astronomy, and especially weather. In a rare 1988 interview, Peart described himself as a weather fanatic, and throughout the band's 40 years on the road, his tour bus TV was normally tuned to the Weather Channel. He took note of not just the changing weather outside his window, but also the changes in the weather enterprise, expressing frustration and increasingly having to turn online for local weather information. You'll find meteorology throughout the band's catalog. And these weren't just drive-by references either. Peart really knew his stuff. He wasn't afraid to educate his audience a little bit. He used weather as a source for vivid imagery. In Ceiling Unlimited, he uses the sky condition as a metaphor for the enormity of the world that he loved to explore on his motorcycle. He described contrails in the 2002 Vapor Trails as stratospheric traces of condensation, of transitory flight. The cover of the band's 1980 album Permanent Waves features an iconic 1961 photo of the Galveston seawall during Hurricane Carla. And Force 10 from the band's 87 album Hold Your Fire comes from the Beaufort scale. It's filled with weather references. The Beaufort scale would come up again in the song Spindrift, a nautical term for the blowing spray above cresting waves, an indication of gale force winds. Peart shared that he and his wife were expecting in an article titled Under the Marine Layer, but not without educating his fans about the temperature inversion that causes it. He was also a student of astronomy. The sight of sundogs at sunset, later watching a meteor shower with his daughter, inspired the song Chain Lightning. It was in that same song he reminded us that tides respond to lunar gravitation. He also accurately and eloquently described the phenomenon of light reflected off Earth onto the moon in the song Earthshine. But when somebody asks me what watching a launch is like in person, I point them to Rush's 82 album Signals, and maybe the band's spaciest song, Countdown. It captures the anticipation and excitement like no other in its description of the experience watching that first shuttle launch. That same song would be used to wake up astronauts on future space shuttle flights, including the penultimate STS-134. Now, Neil lives on not just in the music, but in the night sky too. In 1990, astronomer Brian Roman from the Mount Palomar Observatory in California discovered a new main belt asteroid. He named it 23469 Neil Peart.
Wow.
The show just got banned off YouTube, but I have to nominate that for the best recorded segment in the history of the show.
Really? I think Tony is a Rush fan.
I thought Tom Sawyer was just a song about drugs.
I didn't know that Peart was a weather weenie. That's interesting stuff.
Sad we didn't know that before he passed away.
And for those that follow me on Instagram, we do this thing called Song of the Night every night at 10:20.
Now you got a whole new catalog.
Well, no, this is Rush Week because typically when somebody passes away, we'll take their music and that'll be our theme for the week. So that will give me some research for what I'm going to do this week. But anyway, let's do Weather Roundup here. I guess I got to play our song here. Sorry, I'm not being a good producer here tonight. Here we go.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Doing this on the 14th of January, 2020. And we're going to get cold here. Kevin, how cold is going to get out there in 5 days where you are?
Yeah, I was looking at that. I think we kind of get the edge of it. We're waiting on a weak cold front tomorrow, dry one. So it's pretty quiet. It's been fairly quiet around here. We had a little snow early Saturday morning. There was a little convective band from about Graham, Texas, which is south of Wichita Falls, southern end of our DMA, through about Decatur to near Bowie, where some folks got between 2 and 3 inches. So neat little burst there, but just a dusting in Wichita Falls.
Yeah, we've been very mild down here in the deep south. Of course, the east and the south. In fact, I noticed in Boston, they had like a record high a couple of days ago, but they're going in the deep freeze. And we go in the deep freeze down here next week, Bill. I've seen some of the data coming in suggesting we could do teens down here at this low latitude by the middle part of next week, highs in the 30s and lows in the teens. Right. And after we've been in the 70s, that's a little brisk.
Well, and you have to mention the tornado that we had on Saturday that killed 3 people here in Alabama. There are other fatalities to the west of us too, and
dadgummit,
to see that happening.
I just this past Saturday we had a very well advertised severe weather event. This was a widespread wind damage day. We had wind damage in at least 40 counties and mostly trees down. And we had at least 5 tornadoes so far identified by the Weather Service offices in Birmingham and Huntsville. We had a couple of EF2 tornadoes. One hit a school south of Huntsville, and this was a Saturday, so no kids were in there. But we had one that came through a part of West Alabama, Pickens County, Alabama, where 3 people died. All 3 were in mobile homes. I mean, and look, I don't even want to go down this rat hole, I guess. And I'm not here to bash the mobile home industry. It's like cars. I mean, cars are great. When the news is over tonight, I'm going to hop in my car and drive home. If I walked, it would take a couple of hours. I'm going to drive. It's going to take 20 minutes. But cars great, but you can't stay in a car during a tornado. I'm all for cars. They're great, but they're a death trap during a tornado. And it's the same thing for manufactured housing. Wonderful, affordable housing. It has given so many people a marvelous lifestyle. I'm their biggest fan, but during a tornado, they're a death trap. You got to get out of there. And we have had so much loss of life in mobile homes. We had the fatalities several weeks ago up in Lawrence County in North Alabama, and now this. I do know this, the couple that died, we had a husband and wife that died. There were some mobility issues. The husband had some health problems, and they have to have a lift to get him out of the bed, and they simply couldn't get out. And that complicated the situation there. And the other case, I don't know, but it was a mobile home. They found a receipt from one of the deceased, a water bill receipt 50 miles away. So the debris was lofted, at least 10, 15,000 feet. And I'm just so tired of this, loss of life. And we've just got some work to do, but we'll talk with Kim, and when everybody gets back, and we'll kind of review what happened on that day. But let's go to picks of the.
Let me interrupt you, because you forwarded that thing that Kevin Laws sent out about mobile home, manufactured home FAQs, and there were several interesting points. And I'm actually going to talk to him about it for something else later in the week. But is that something that he has released publicly, or what is the?
No, we're just look. What we're trying to do. We know we've got to do something.
Say what it is first, or is that what you're doing? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, again, that's kind of a. That's not going to be released publicly, I don't think. It's just internally for us as we try and review what is a mobile home, what is a manufactured home, what is a trailer, what is a this and what is a that, what about the tie downs, when did the building codes change? We're trying to learn more about these structures to help us and listen to engineers help us. But we know as a group, we've got to do something. And I think my personal opinion is that we have to come up with a product between a watch and a warning to give people time to go to a shelter or their site-built building, whatever that happens to be, because often it's going to take them 20 or 30 minutes to drive there. And the lead time for tornado warnings is typically 5, 10, 12 minutes. And that's not adequate time. And we did something different. I've been doing this 41 years. I've never done this before. But for this entire event this past Saturday, I said, if you are under a severe thunderstorm warning today, you need to take the exact same actions you would take as if you were under a tornado warning. I've never done that. Based on the projected wind fields and the number of trees that I thought were going to come down, I just thought that was the right thing to do. And
for mobile home or manufactured homes, or for everybody?
Everybody. So if you're in a site-built house, you're going to go to your small room on the lowest floor near the center, away from windows, and put on helmets. I
had so many people thank me for that message, James, after Saturday, because we did the same thing, because we're surrounded by huge trees, and I brought all the boys down and we went through our plan, right before the squall line got here. And we recommended all their friends' parents the same things. And they all said thank you, because we had no power in our entire community for 18 hours after the storms hit. And
I've had no negatives, which is amazing. I always get negatives, but we were basically asking the entire state the whole state at some point during that day, we were asking you to go through your plan. My wife went into the storm shelter downstairs. We have the neighbors came over into the shelter. We were asking everybody to do it. And I think a lot of people did. I'm still looking at thousands and thousands of pictures from that day of people in their safe place, wearing their helmets. And I think our message is getting traction. And we were asking people in mobile homes to leave, to get out and go to your shelter, your community shelter, or if you don't have a community shelter, go to some business or any place that would welcome you. Get in there and get out of your mobile home, because if a tree falls through that thing, it's going to kill somebody. And I had great fear that we would have, some loss of life from falling trees. We did not. We had the loss of life from the trailers that were destroyed during the tornado in Pickens County. So I do want to go back and look at that day at some point to kind of gauge from the social scientists how that whole thing worked. I don't think I'm going to do that very often. I might not do it again in my career, ask everybody to do that. But I thought in that case it was appropriate. But still, we had that loss of life, which was so hard. All right, we got to hustle, because I am the lead story tonight, because we got a flood watch for 2 counties or something. I thought
you were going to say you're the lead because it's Tuesday.
Well, it is too. Yeah, I'm the lead every night. So, Kev, what's your pick of the week? Go.
I have a article titled Google. Well, the title is Google says new AI models allow for, quote, nearly instantaneous, end quote, weather forecasts. And they're training their computers to kind of forecast in a little different way. I don't fully understand it. It's crunching a lot of data, but in a different way than the traditional models that we are familiar with do. And they claim very high accuracy on precipitation and such out to about 6 hours.
Okay, cool. And all these will be up on weatherbrains.com. Mine is a video about IBM's new model, the Weather Company. And I forget the exact acronym they use, but it's their global model to basically compete with the GFS, the European. And they are starting to introduce that. For a lot of us that use their equipment, it's going to replace the RPM model in our weather boxes. So the model output, of course, we could show any model we want to, but their model will be in our system. So we can start showing that fairly soon, which means we probably need to start learning a little bit about that. But anyway, there's a little video, and that's my pick of the week. Bill Murray, what's your pick of the week?
Yeah, mine is my new weather model, which is one of those magic 8-ball things. That's what I use.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
We've got the emergency manager of Douglas County, Kansas, joining us next Monday night, James. Jillian Rodriguez is going to join us, and that's going to be an interesting and fun show that Jeremy Bauer suggested to us, and he's going to join us as the guest panelist.
Awesome. That'll be great.
Did you get one of those? Who's the guy at George Mason? Did you get one of these, James? The survey thing, the George Mason guy. What's his name?
Climate change communication guy.
Yes, Maybach. Is that his name?
Yes.
Did you get one of those?
Yes.
Did you fill it out?
No.
Are you going to?
No.
Has he ever been on this show?
No. I think we should invite him, though.
We should invite
Why not?
him. Yeah,
I think we should.
Week after next.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
And again, I would, here's the problem. The time is the greatest equalizer in life. I don't care who you are. You got 24 hours in a day. How you spend it determines who you are. And I've cut sleep back to 3 to 4 hours a night, and that's somewhat that's dangerous. And I have to prioritize things. And for me, that's just, maybe I'll fill out a survey in the summer when things slow down a little bit. But this between now and the middle of June, I run fast and furious. I'm up at 4:30. I get home at midnight. I go to sleep at 1. You're sleeping 3.5 hours. It's just, Kevin, you fill it out for me. How about that?
We should get him on the show because they've been doing that a number of years now, and that's there's interesting components to that. We should get him on.
We get to hear the ending jingle. This is nice.
Yeah, we got to go.
Is that some clue? Is that a hint? Am I talking too much?
Well, I'm just saying I got to go is what I'm saying. Y'all can talk all night. Weather Brains typically on every Monday night at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. And if you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. Our social media accounts, the ones Kevin's so proud of, it's up on the website as well. So on behalf of the entire Weather Brains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. All right. I got to go, man. Tardy. Thank y'all. Bye. Y'all have a great week. Bye-bye.